get to the motions early in the proceedings. And then items 5 to 6, matters arising. Then I'll have correspondence and any urgent and relevant business. Councillor Robinson has contacted me with an item for any other business, but I might even be able to bring that in earlier in a related matter. Obviously, there's a number of things then before we go through the agenda that I'm keen to detail. First thing I want to do is I want to call Councillor Bert Wilson to make a personal statement. Over to you, Bert. Okay.
I was. Can you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
I did not really think about this night coming, but I was born in 1940, so you can figure out from that my age. And I went to school at Vintna, Danamona Primary School. I went on to the academy. And then after 3 years there, I transferred to the technical college where they had set up an agricultural course at that time, and I done 2 years then. And since that, I had been farming. It was something I always wanted to do, and that's really. But as you all know, or probably have been amazed, I was elected to the council here as a unionist for something which I do not, I have always been proud of. I was elected to represent Mid Tyrone, which is a very rural DEA, and John Anderson, I would like to thank him who was my election agent, and also Ronald Oldcroft, who assisted very much. Although I was and believe in unionism, I also believe in fair play and equality. And I would thank the people of Mid Tyrone for electing me at that time, and it's true to the present day. I had the honour of topping the poll for the only unionist that ever topped the poll in Mid Tyrone, and to me that was quite an honour. And during my time, I worked for all the people of Mid Tyrone, regardless of class or creed, and I done that to the best of my ability. And I had a fairly, had an interest in the farming, so and it is the backbone of any society, so that was one thing that I like to push on. I would have served at a time on Nilga, which gave me a great opportunity to meet with ministers in Stormont at that time and bring the problems from Mid Tyrone and our West Tyrone area to that body, and it was very useful. I suppose it was really my age and different problems that I have. When I went to school in 1940, there was no such thing as emails. There was no such thing as IT and that, and I never really had enough to do with farming. I never really bothered. In the time of the COVID, and that it left me at a slight disadvantage. And also, I had my license taken for health reasons, and it left me. I was really in problems, and I couldn't, in some cases, travel where I wanted to give my constituents the help that they needed. I have now thankfully got over that end of it, and I've got my license returned. my age, as I say, is I will be 83 by the next election that's coming round. And over the years, I hadn't got a lot of time now with my family and my wife, who were always behind me and really worked hard and good supporters. I joined, I was a member of the part-time security forces, and I also got a part-time job driving a school bus for 16, 18 years. And that was to supplement my income whenever we were trying to build up our farm to the way we wanted it. I did enjoy my time in the council and working with the other councillors. We didn't always agree, but we always worked out something that was of benefit to the people in our areas. And I will miss that. I'll also miss my colleagues here that I have worked with for quite a while. In the old Legacy Council, I was chairman in the Omagh Legacy Council, and I was also vice chairman in Fermanagh Omagh. And I felt honoured to be in that position. It was to really represent the people in the area, all the people, and I done my best to do that to the best of my ability. And I'm sure there are people out there who will say, well, Olsen didn't do all that we maybe wanted, but I always tried my best to do what I could. I would thank Alison and her team. Without the girls realising that I was IT illiterate, and they did help me out in a lot of ways, as did Tom Ellett and Rosemary Barton. When I wanted anything, they done emails and that for me. I must say that we have on our farm, Val and the family did support me when I should have been working maybe on the farm and away running on council business. We do have a problem in that our eldest son, when he was 27, he was driving an oil tanker for Hearsts, and I don't know, the experts at that time said he had a leakage in his brain, and that's quite a while ago. He's now in his 50s. He has been mostly hospitalised. He would have been in the Lyme ward in Omagh for a number of years. He is now in, I think it's Hillcrest, it's just beside the council gates there. He's in that. And he is full-time in a wheelchair. I suppose we should be thankful. Some people have their families go to the grave and leaving flowers on them. But we can go in and see him, and some days he's in good form and some days he's not. So it is just a problem for the family trying to visit him and keep him happy. But anyway, that's and when I sit in the council often and listen to the health service being run down, in no way could I say anything other than that we have got the best service that could be got, and at present is hoping to get physiotherapy, which maybe will help him some way. And as I say, I've had problems myself, and I couldn't say anything about the health service. No matter who the Minister of Health is, it's nothing to do with that. But as I say, I'm here tonight to just say to the fellow councillors here, I have given Alison notice that I will be staying on. There's an agricultural meeting which I don't want to miss on the 10th of December or 10th of November. I also have to represent somebody on the 17th of November at an appeal in Belfast, and I don't want to let them down, but I will be, the 18th of November will be my final day in the council. And once again, I'd thank you all And I did enjoy the company. I will miss it. And I'm sure that my colleagues here now have the opportunity of choosing somebody to fill the seat that I have been in now for around 22 years. Well, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And I have one indication online. Of course, we're in the town hall, but we're on WebEx tonight as well. So, Councillor Deehan, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. And I'm sorry, Chair, that I'm not in the chamber personally tonight to thank Councillor Wilson for his many years of dedicated public servant as a councillor in the Legacy Omagh District Council and in Fermanagh District Council. Thank you for sharing, Councillor Wilson, your experiences of life and your experiences as a public representative. And I have no hesitation in saying that I am filled with admiration for the dedication and commitment that you have shown in this role. You have outlined to us this evening, Chair, I'm sure you will agree, all of your life's experiences and your experiences of life. And certainly thank you for sharing details of the challenges, your own personal health challenges and that of your son. And my very best wishes go to you for your future health and also for your son as well. I think that you have really demonstrated that as a human individual and a person, you have given everything that you can to your family, to your community. You have worked very hard in your chosen profession as a farmer. You're very knowledgeable there, and you have shared on many occasions your experience as a farmer and made a very valuable contribution. Your year as chair and vice chair in the Legacy Omagh District Council and Fermanagh Omagh District Council were, I'm sure, quite challenging time-wise, but now is the time for you to relax with your family and with your friends and to put your feet up and really enjoy the fruits of your labours. But please be assured that you have earned the admiration and respect of your fellow councillors and of your community. So very well done, and thank you, and my very best wishes for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously this is news to a lot of us just hearing this tonight. I'd like to wish Councillor Wilson all the best as a fellow representative of the Mid-Tyrone DA. I suppose I initially knew Bert as a councillor before I did a council colleague, and I have to say, in the early years of the battle that's currently ongoing up in Greencastle, he was one of those who was a great supporter of the local people up in Greencastle. And as he would reference probably himself, there were maybe not as many of his naturally inclined voters in that area, but he did receive support because of the stance that he took as a farmer and as someone who would have an interest in looking after the water, looking after the land and protecting the local area, leaving it, as he said, in a better state than he found it for future generations. So I'd just like to wish Bert all the best, and hoping he gets many happy years to spend with his family now that he's retiring from this role. But I know rightly he'll be kept busy with the farm and everything else in between times. So thank you and all the best.
Harold.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I take this opportunity on behalf of the Democratic Unionist Party and on my own behalf as well. I have known Councillor Bert Wilson. Well, I knew him long before he was a councillor. I've known Bert, I'm just trying to work it out there. I've known him for about 39 years. So that's showing my age as well. So, and I suppose I knew him when we were both part-time soldiers together. I went on to be a full-time soldier at that stage, probably a wee bit later than that. But I've also known him through various organisations over the years, and I've always found him to be a friendly individual. I know his family well as well. And I want to take, I think Councillor Dehan really hit the nail on the head. She covered nearly everything that probably everyone else was going to say, but she got on first. I want to wish Bert, his wife Val, and the family all the very best for the years ahead. And long may you be spared, Bert, to carry on in your farming activities and also with your family activities as well. So I know other speakers want to come on, but I'll leave it at that. Wish you all the best, Bert. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Coyle.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to wish Bert a very happy retirement. And on behalf of the party, it's sad that you've taken the decision, but a long and active life, and I think it's time for it to take a rest. Maybe Mrs. Wilson might be messaging us in a couple of months to ask us to take you back, but you'll be under her feet. But we have worked well in the council in Fermanagh and Omagh, and we've agreed more than we have ever disagreed. And I'm pleased to say that you're a friend and that we will not be strangers in the future, that we will meet and have a laugh. So I wish you a happy retirement, Bert, and you'll be sorely missed by the constituents that you serve.
Thank you. Corlear McGear.
Gormagan Kearney, thank you, Chair. And as the former other councillor said, this is news to us. So I would certainly just wish to add my voice to best wishes for Bert in his retirement. Bert and myself would obviously have major political differences, but despite all that, I have to appreciate that Bert has represented his people on agricultural matters, especially, of which he's very knowledgeable after farming for so many years, and I'm sure his community appreciates that, as the whole district would. And I'd also but congratulate him on his efforts within the planning committee. I think he's one of the members that's not on the committee but attends maybe more often than some of the committee members. So I think he deserves credit for his endeavours, especially on the planning and on the agriculture matters, and certainly wish him well in his retirement. I suppose we all have to come to that stage, Bert, but the best of luck with you in your retirement, Bert. Gormagat, Chair.
Thank you, Gormagat. Move now to Corlear O'Coffey.
Thanks, Chair. And I wanted to add my voice to those today wishing Bert the best in his future. And I think Bert has made a significant contribution in the few years I've been here. He's an eclectic and open-minded. He was very innovative in his thought and come up with things that many of us had missed in consideration. So I think he will definitely be missed. His knowledge of farming and his fearless defence of farmers at this time when they're under such attack, I think is a testimony to him. And if someone was to ask me about his politics, I'd say he has a very firm set of beliefs, not all of which I would totally agree with, but I think the two words I would say is integrity and honesty is what I see in them. And I wish you all the best. I think you'll have long years of farming ahead of you, but we all have to find our way in this world. But the main thing is that we need to find a future for the people, workers, farmers, and others who are trying to get by in this terrible time. And your commitment, I think, will hopefully inspire others to step forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Of two member indications, and Victor, I want to give the last say to you on the elected member side. So I think I'll bring in Bernice before you, Victor. I'll go to Councillor Swift.
Gormagat, Cahirlock, and I too just want to say all the very best, add more art to you, Bert. You certainly were colourful to say the least, in working with you in the chamber. And I know you've said tonight's probably just the second night that you've ever even been in the town hall. Pity we didn't know. We could have threw a party and even given you the bumps and got you back for some of the things you've said. But all joking aside, it was interesting during COVID, and I'll always remember we had a few laughs all together. Can you hear me? Can you see me hand? My hand's up. It was fun, without a doubt, Bert. And it's great to be able to remember you when you're still here and to hear all the nice things said when you're alive and well. It's not a great privilege that a lot of people manage to achieve, and you are going to enjoy your twilight years, hopefully now in good health. So I wish you all the best, you and your family, and you'll not be too far away if we need any farming advice, okay? Don't forget us on the Agricultural Liaison Group, okay, Bert? Slán.
Okay, thank you, Bernice. And Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. I was meant to be in the chamber tonight, but unfortunately something cropped up that I couldn't get there. I think, you know, everybody's summed Bert up there very well. A character, and certainly the IT shenanigans made us all smile regularly at times. But as people have already said, Bert was a strong believer in the things that he believed in. He was a strong unionist. But he was passionate about agriculture, and let's say it as it is. Agriculture doesn't have a religion or a political party, and Bert was passionate about it going forward and trying to achieve the best that he could for agriculture, and as has already been said, regardless of who it was for, what it was for, or whatever. He also had a great interest in the planning, and I know he represented. There was hardly a week or a month went by on the planning committee that Bert wasn't in there representing somebody. And he I think he just loved the challenge of taking on the officers in the planning committee, but that's neither here or there. No doubt we'll have a get together for Bert to be arranged, but we certainly we will miss him as a colleague, and we will also miss him for the character and the crack that we had with him. But like at the end of the day, Bert says, you know, he was born in 1940. Bert deserves to sit down and put his feet up and have a relaxing time. And I would say there is no doubt that Bert will still be very much to the front of his farming empire at home, and will still be the CEO in the Wilson Farms moving forward. So certainly from the Ulster Unionist Party, Bert, all the best as we move forward, and no doubt we'll talk soon. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Victor. And from the CEO of the Wilson Farm to the CEO of Fermanagh Noma District Council.
Segue, Chair, thank you. Well, Chair, just from an officer perspective, to again convey our thanks to Councillor Wilson, and I think members have summed up very succinctly all his attributes, but the great commitment that he brought to the role, the dedication, particularly in planning matters, but agricultural and rural development more generally. And I would just like to thank you, Bert, for the courtesy with which you always worked with officers, and also the efforts that you made to try and resolve matters behind the scenes, try to get things resolved quickly and to the best outcome as well. So I've no doubt that you'll continue to be busy, and now that you have honed your IT skills, you'll be able to tune in on YouTube if you're ever looking for something to do of an evening. But thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And just Bert, to acknowledge what Tommy was saying about your very strong representation at planning meetings. I thought that was a good point he made, that at times we wondered, were you a member of the committee or not? You know, you were there, and you belonged to Stephen, perhaps the Pat McDonald School of Rural Planning, which was at nearly every site was a good site. Wouldn't that be fair to say? You know, Pat used to say, I've seen worse sites passed. Bert says he was right on that, and he hasn't figured out what site we're talking about. I've seen worse sites passed, and that's that. So it was important to take that time to allow Bert properly to make a statement, and for once tonight I didn't mind whether you strayed over the 3 minutes or not, you know. But I can't extend that generosity from this point onwards. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, so again, just in the preliminaries of the meeting, I also want to extend a welcome to a young man who is accompanying Councillor Bell this evening on work experience. Isn't that right, Matthew? Matthew Spratt from Plumbridge area. So you're very welcome, Matthew. Thank you. And I want to also make brief reference to a lobbying letter I received during the past couple of weeks. And I won't go into great detail because I think we could maybe revisit this at the Policy and Resources Committee on Wednesday, the 9th of November. It comes from campaigners supporting it's against a development proposal to close St Mary's Primary School, 5 Mile Town. Now that may be in the Mid-Ulster Council area, and Mid-Ulster Council are looking at it, but it obviously has an impact on areas like Cunyon and Brookborough. So I would intend to return to that on Wednesday, the 9th of November, if I can, you know, and I'll submit the lobbying material that has been sent to me. And it's my understanding that it has been raised in Mid-Ulster Council, but the community there looking for support. And this might be an appropriate moment then to reach out to Councillor Paul Robinson, who's on WebEx this evening. Paul, you have a related point you want to make, and I'm going to take it now.
Thank you, Barry. It's to do with Final Town Library. I know it's in Mid-Ulster area, but residents and community ones have been on to me from Clabby, Brookborough, Cunyon about the library in Final Town. It's been tumbled in January, and there's not a thing done on the site since. And they were just wondering, could we do anything about it? Could we send a letter to the library board to see what is happening and what's the hold up in the whole thing?
Okay. So maybe that could be scoped out as well and represented at the Wednesday, the 9th of November. Or okay, I've got a suggestion from Alison. We can simply action what you've said, Paul, and we'll take it that you're proposing that. Have I got a seconder? Diana Armstrong has seconded that. Okay, and agreed, members. Okay. Now, Bernice wrote to me before the meeting as well. Very briefly, Bernice, you're in a sporting frame of mind. Okay.
Always in a sporting frame of mind.
Yep.
And it's to say congratulations and good luck to the Derragonley Harps Gaelic football players. And they have been successful in their semi-final on Sunday, where they were victorious over Moortown, and they head towards the Ulster Intermediate final this Sunday at Healy Park in Omagh for 3 o'clock. And I want to wish them all the very best of good luck, and I'm hoping that everybody here will be 100% beside them, behind them, and beside them indeed when they win the trophy. I have the paperwork already ready to hit send for an appropriate reception. So come on, the Harps a boo.
I wouldn't let you in at all if I knew it was Moortown the bit. Okay. Councillor Feely, very briefly.
Yeah. Just like to agree with Bernice there and wish the Harps the best of luck. I didn't get up to the game at the weekend there for our own team was playing, so I missed it, but I'll try and make home on Sunday. Just to congratulate the Devonish for winning the Intermediate Championship as well. And hard luck to Bleak, who's beaten the senior. Maybe a letter or something can be done later on, Barry. Okay.
Okay. Be very brief, Paul and Tommy. Paul.
Thank you very much indeed for letting me in at this point, Chair. It was also at this point when Councillor Swift raised the point about Derragonley Harps. It would be remiss of me not to congratulate Enniskillen and Gales on winning the senior championship on Sunday. A tremendous victory over Bleak, Erin Gales, and great to see him winning the title for the first time since 2006. So it's a great achievement for the town to win it. So we'll wish them all the best as they go forward now to play the Cavan champions Gowna in 2 weeks' time. So wish them all the best for that. Thanks.
Okay, and Tommy, finally.
Similarly, just a second, Paul's congratulations there to Enniskillen and Gales on their victory on Sunday. And perhaps the Chair could send a letter of congratulations. Would that be in order, Chair?
Well, we'll check the protocol.
Protocol, please.
Sometimes these are county matters and it's expected that it's provincial or national, in the sporting achievements. But, good luck to Ergil Kieran, I say. Even though they beat Carrickmore. Enough of that. Enough of that. Alan Rennie is back me on that one. Okay. Okay, members, that's the preliminaries dealt with in terms of the meeting. So we're going to go through the agenda proper now. And apologies, can I go to Councillor Maguire?
Gurmanga to Kerley, to Birch, Leskildon Group of Hinfiananock. We have two apologies, Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald and Councillor Christopher McCaffrey. Gurmanga to Kerley.
Gurmagat, Mahu. And then Councillor Warrington, I'd like you to come in next.
The only apology that I am aware of is Councillor Baird is not going to be here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Robinson. Paul Robinson.
No apologies, Chair, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Garrity.
Thank you and good evening, Chair. No apologies from the SDLP tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And independents and single member parties. Are there any apologies? Councillor McAleer.
Yes, Chair, an apology from Councillor Keenan. He's attending the Save Our Southwest Acute Services meeting in Lisnaskea, but he hopes to get here, just depending on what time that finishes up at.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's the apologies dealt with. Okay, moving on then. And this is for accuracy only. We're going to confirm and sign the meeting, the council meeting minutes, and that meeting was held on the 4th of October. Paper A, so 19 pages. For accuracy only. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15, 16 and 17, 18 and 19. Okay, so that's okay. We've got an intervention.
Thanks, Chair. Now, just very briefly on page 18, and it's the resolution at the top of the page. Point 1, I think just the R house is actually spelt incorrectly, and the 3 points go 1, 2, 4. So just the third point needs to be amended from 4 to 3. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's agreed, members. So moving on then to, I'll take a proposer, Matthew Bell, and a seconder, Earl Thompson, for the adoption of the minutes in terms of accuracy. Okay. And then moving on to the 17th of October meeting, and that was a special council meeting addressing issues to do with the cost of living crisis. And so 10 pages there for accuracy. Page 1, page 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 6 and 7, 8 and 9, and 10. Okay, do I have a proposer then? Councillor Stevenson and John Coyle, Councillor Coyle, seconded, and that's agreed, members. Okay, at this point, does any member wish to declare an interest in relation to tonight's meeting, either on WebEx or in the chamber here in the town hall? Doesn't appear so. So I'm going to move on then. And as suggested earlier, the reordering of the agenda, move now to item 7. Okay, so item 7. And yeah, so it's the 21st of September meeting, the planning committee. And Councillor O'Reilly is the chair of the planning committee, of course. He may wish to assist us in this one. But I want to confirm the minutes of the planning committee, so I'll have to go through the 19 pages. Okay. For accuracy, page 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, page 13, page 14, page 15, page 16, 17, 18, and page 19. Okay? Have I got a, don't need to propose? Councillor Riley. Councillor Riley, would you be of a mind to propose?
I would indeed, so be, Chair.
Thank you. And have I got a seconder? Councillor Thompson was first and Councillor Rennie was willing as well. Councillor Thompson, seconded. That's agreed. Moving on then to the minutes of the Environmental Services Committee. Looking to you, John, for continued leadership. You know what I mean, John? Environmental Services Committee meeting held on the 5th of October. And page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, 8 and 9, 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, and 15. Okay, John, of a mind, are you? Okay, so John's going to.
Oppose the noting of the adoption, sorry, of the minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And have we got a seconder for that? Okay, Councillor Wilson. Thank you. Moving on then, the RNC meeting, and Councillor Buchanan is our chair there. So to confirm the minutes of the Regeneration Community Committee meeting, which was held on the 11th of October, paper E, and 12 pages there. Page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, 10, 11, and 12. Councillor Buchanan?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thanks very much. And have I got a seconder for that? Okay, Councillor Stevenson again, thanks. And then that's adopted now as accurate. Moving then to item 10 on the agenda, and to confirm the minutes of the Policy and Resources Committee meeting held on the 12th of October, and we'll look to Councillor Thompson for guidance, maybe when we reach page 9. So, page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, 5, 6, page 7, page 8, and page 9. Proposed by?
Thank you, Chair. I propose the adoption of the Policy and Resources minutes.
Okay. And then I'll require a seconder for that. Paul Stevenson. I'll give it to Alan Rennie this time, Paul. You know what I mean? It's like an auctioneer up here. Okay. With your agreement, Paul. Okay, thank you. That's great. And that's those documents adopted for accuracy. Okay. So now we're dealing with items 14 to 19. And for that, and I expect this to be brief, we'll go into committee confidential matters. I'll take a proposal for to go into confidential matters. Garvin, seconded by Errol. Thank you. So Councillor McPhillips and Councillor Thompson. Okay, so we'll take a moment. Isn't that what we do, Donald? Thank you, Donald. So we've come out of confidential matters, handing over to the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. Just to advise that while in committee, the Council confirmed and signed the confidential minutes of the Council meeting held on the 4th of October. There were no matters arising from those minutes, and also confirmed the confidential minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 21st of September, the confidential minutes of Environmental Services held on the 5th of October, confidential minutes of Regeneration and Community held on the 11th of October, and the confidential minutes of Policy and Resources held on the 12th of October.
And a proposer and seconder for that, Councillor Stevenson and Councillor Coyle. Thank you. Okay, members, we're now at item 12 in the agenda, and we have 3 motions, obviously, and I'm going to go to the first notice of motion, 12.1, and this is entitled Demand for a Truly Independent Environmental Protection Agency. And the proposer of this motion, Councillor Emmett McAleer, will have 5 minutes. His seconder, Councillor O'Coffey, will have 3 minutes. So I'm going to bring you in. Bring you out there. Over to you now, Emmett.
Perfect, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm taking the motion as read at this stage, and as this motion sets out, and we're all very aware, the current state of our local environment, and indeed that right across the north, doesn't make for good reading. The NIEA is failing, and it's obvious that we need a better standard of regulation given the scale of the problem we're facing. Some facts that NIEA themselves note are that 40% of ASSI flora and fauna features are in unfavourable condition. Only 1 out of 49 priority habitats are in favourable condition. 11% of native species assessed threatened with extinction. That's 272 out of over 2,500 species. Breeding curlew, there was an 82% decline between 1987 and 2013, potentially a 90% decline up to now. Over a quarter of Ireland's regularly occurring bird species are now on the red list. Butterfly indicator species declined by 43% since 2006, and indeed freshwater pearl mussels, Ireland's only critically endangered species globally, now are only in 6 of the river systems here, including the Owen, Ravenlow and Killew, which are very important for the habitats for the pearl mussels. 12% of the north is covered by peatland habitats. 86% of peatland habitats are degraded. Scandals have catapulted the North's environmental governance failures into the public eye. They include RHA, the discovery of illegal dumping on massive scale, and the recently exposed aggregates levy credit scheme, amongst others. The financial implications of these failures, which extend far beyond new headlines, are epic in scale. They played a key role in destabilising Stormont's political institutions, and it could be argued that they now threaten the economic viability of the state. To many, the impending crisis comes as no surprise. Environmental governance is a problem here as well documented over the past 30 years. Systemic failures of successive devolved administrations to take environmental governance seriously, respond to critiques of the performance of the environmental regulator, ensure the effective enforcement of environmental law have all contributed to this malaise. There's the possibility that dysfunction or collapsing political institutions at Stormont and issues associated with Brexit may stymie reform. This could present a unique opportunity to reinvent environmental governance. It could begin the process of remedying the damage caused by years of neglect, but to date, unfortunately, this has not been the case. A well-managed environment should be seen as a vital asset for the shared future of the people of the North, and a greater focus on protecting this common interest will enhance confidence in power sharing and demonstrate ability. Indeed, the high membership numbers of environmental NGOs, locally and nationally, indicate that there's clearly an appetite for environmental protection that is currently at odds with the level of importance assigned to it by the previous devolved governments. Given the severe consequences of environmental governance failures and its potentially devastating economic and ecological consequences, a reform of the current state of environmental governance is urgently required. We've seen numerous examples brought to this Council where the competency of NIEA and its ability to carry out the role has been questioned and thrown into serious doubts. Numerous academic and other reports have reiterated the failures of current governance arrangements, the need for independence, poor enforcement, lack of resources, with many arguing that a principal regulatory agency, the NIEA, is politically captured because it does not sit independently of a department. Indeed, the recent success of a judicial review against the issuing of a water discharge consent by the NIA in relation to exploratory works at Cornwall indicates the extent to which the agencies cannot even regulate basic discharges. The BBC Spotlight documentary of October 2022 bore witness from a professor, Stephen H. Emmerman, an independent expert specialising in groundwater and mining, who, despite having worked across the globe, was saying, "I have never interacted with a regulatory agency so incompetent as the NIA." I could easily pull together 30 other reports and articles that argue NIA's lack of independence, almost unique in Europe and certainly within these islands, has created a system that is not capable of managing, monitoring or enforcing a project of this type. The issue of an independent EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, was reinserted into political discussions as part of its inclusion with the New Decade New Approach Agreement.
Half a minute left, Emmett.
Although an independent IEPA is not a panacea for the myriad of problems that have characterised the experience of regulating the environment, it would at least inject some much needed credibility into an unfit for purpose regulatory efforts in the wake of years of scathing criticism. The case for an independent environmental agency is long overdue. It's mindful of this sense of urgency and the gravity of this problem that I propose the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Good time management. Thank you, Emmett. And Councillor O'Coffey. I'll come to you now, Cornwall O'Coffey.
Yeah, Gormagat. Yeah, I'm happy to second this and thank Councillor McAleer for bringing it forward. The issue of the lack of an independent environmental protection agency here in Northern Ireland is something that is genuinely concerning. I believe the current situation is that of regulatory capture. I have absolutely no confidence in the NIEA. I have witnessed at first hand the consequences and the lack of an inaction and apparent, as far as I'm concerned, the cover-up of reports of large-scale dumps, rivers running dry in our council area, and nobody seems to want to know about any of these things. There's an abject disinterest in genuine pollution events. Every single water body in Northern Ireland has degraded and degrading conditions. There is suddenly the Environment Agency started to apply the test that they should have applied decades ago over water quality, and when they did, they discovered that every single river had been contaminated with permanent toxins, which are not going to go anywhere. So, you know, it has to be said that it's an abject disaster. The only environmental project we can consider is RHI, which, you know, was hundreds of millions of pounds were going to be given away to vested interests. And I think that that's the real problem here, that there's no interest, no political will in challenging vested interests who are getting away with mass pollution of our environment, in particular agri-food multinationals who are being facilitated by Stormont and whose basic interests are served by Stormont ministers. And therefore, there is no independent EPA. Therefore, the NIEA is subject and controlled by the Department of Agriculture, which itself is known to be probably the worst performing in terms of environmental protections. And indeed, you know, I think it poses major political questions around the integrity of institutions and any form of commitment to our environment. There's a generation of young people coming up.
Just half a minute left.
I'm sure they're looking around themselves and their head is spinning. They don't realize, and they're only discovering how so many flora and fauna has disappeared around us, and it is because we have allowed the situation to continue. So I'm certainly happy to second this proposal, and I'll call on other councillors to support it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now, I had an indication in the chamber that is not the case now. I have two on WebEx, Councillor Deehan, followed by Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank you for bringing this agenda item forward so that we can have a good debate on all three motions. Thank you for that. Thank you to Councillor McAleer and Councillor O'Coffey for bringing forward this motion. Chair, I want to speak in support of it. when the Agricultural Liaison Committee met with Minister Putz of DAERA, I myself pushed him on the instigation of an independent environmental protection agency. Chair, you have only to look around you and see that our beautiful planet is at risk. You see the ravages of climate change. You can see the melting ice caps and glaciers owing to global warming. You can see the devastating impact on many countries, including our own. And each and every country must do its best to protect our environment, to respond to the climate change emergency, and to ensure that biodiversity is protected. We are seeing many more species endangered, and this has to stop, Chair. And I honestly believe that we need an independent agency whose main focus is to protect the environment. I honestly believe that that body should be free of any potential influence from government departments. There should be no vested interest. An independent environmental protection agency would exist, Chair, solely to protect the environment. And that is the responsibility of each and every country, and indeed each and every individual. And I think the arrangements as currently stand in Northern Ireland do not fit the bill. The NIEA cannot deliver efficiently and effectively to ensure the level of environmental protection that is urgently required at this critical time in the evolution of our planet. So for that reason, I support the call for the establishment of an independent environmental protection agency, and happy to support the motion, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. I've had an indication from the Chamber, and I do want to alternate between WebEx and the Chamber in the way this is done. So Anthony next, Councillor Feely, then Councillor Warrington. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that. I was no panic coming to talk, but I'll come in now when you let me in there. No, I'll be with the party, Sinn Féin will be supporting this motion that's brought in here, you know, because, well, any motion I see when I'm reading it and I see the word fracking and mining being on it, I always pay more attention than I do to some other motions that we be reading. Maybe I should be paying particular attention to all motion, but definitely when I see mining. And just when we see what happened over there in England then this last month or two with the fracking ban was lifted there, and the then Prime Minister, Liz Truss, I just happened to hear an interview she was doing, I think it was somewhere around Birmingham, of a local radio station. And when the presenter was asked some questions, she hadn't a clue about fracking. She didn't know the harms that fracking was doing on the people, the environment, the farmers, the tourists, the fishery, everything. She hadn't a clue. And she's not the only one that wouldn't have a clue. Nobody has a clue what the harm these things is doing. So I'm going off the motion a wee bit there, but I'm just so we can never keep our eye off the ball and fracking any of them things as mentioned. The way the things go now, you wouldn't know what to try to bring in. So I'm just and Emmett there, he was reading of statistics there about butterflies and everything, all the harms that has been done. He put a lot of work into it there, and it's just it's there for what is happening around where I live, right? Lakes, rivers, and all that. We have to protect them the best we can. So I just happy to support the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And moving now to Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, the Ulster Unionist Party believes that it is crucial that there is a strong legislative and regulatory framework to govern environment. The highest standards must be set and met. I would like to ask the proposer what performance-based statistics he can present to us to highlight how an independent environmental protection agency would compare with the existing regulatory arrangements in Northern Ireland. On the issue of an independent environmental protection agency, I note that the NDNA made commitments for one to be set up. Whilst the UUP did not sign up to the new decade new approach, I've looked at other examples in the UK and Ireland where they exist. There is an independent environmental protection agency in Scotland, and an independent environmental agency in the Republic of Ireland. It is worth saying that the Scottish Independent Environmental Protection Agency had no objections to, and I probably won't pronounce this right, to the Connish gold mine, which is operating in a national park. The Scottish Independent Environmental Protection Agency, who regulate the Connish mine, clearly does not share the proposer's view on mining. I disagree with the language used within this motion, particularly around the use of the term toxic mining. We hear this word from Councillor McAleer on a regular basis, but there is never any scientific evidence to substantiate the word toxic. Mining for minerals is nothing new here, and there are several mines operating across Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Look at the Carrick salt mills or the Tara mines in Meath. The Ulster Unionist Party will not be supporting this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Warrington. And I think with that, I return now to Councillor McAleer for summing up. And you have 3 minutes, I think, in that matter, Councillor McAleer.
Perfect, thanks, Chair. There's so many examples of poor water quality, poor air quality, and declining soil health, not to mention the disappearance of biodiversity, that I suppose highlighting one or another is a difficult task. And I think that's the essence of the importance of this motion. I would welcome the comments made by Councillors Deehan and Councillor Feely in terms of the vital need for an independent, free from overview of interested parties, Environmental Protection Agency. I think that is the gist of it. It's unfortunate, I suppose, that Councillor Warrington differs from his South Antrim colleague, Jim Wilson, who actually said quite recently that it was outrageous that Northern Ireland was the only region in the United Kingdom that did not have its own independent Environmental Protection Agency. There's a real concern amongst conservationists, anglers, and all waterway users that the Department of the Environment is simply not pulling enough punches when it comes to tackling pollution of our lakes, rivers, and streams. Even those culprits who are brought before the courts receive derisory fines and escape with slapped wrists. So maybe he might want to speak to some of his party colleagues before towing again the line of the mining parties. Again, the PR people must have been in contact to advise him on what to say there when he talks about Tara mines. What relevance that has to a copper mine in County Meath, I'm unsure. Maybe he could advise us after the meeting. I do welcome Councillor Feely's comments and indeed the importance of protecting against mining and fracking, particularly in this district, and I welcome the support of his party. I'd be wary, I suppose, just in terms of placing all our hopes in an independent EPA, but it's a step in the right direction and a step away from where we are at the minute. The Ecological Integrity Index identifies Ireland, north and south, as one of the most depleted parts in Europe, and we're ranked the 12th worst country in the world in protecting nature. The reason is poor enforcement, confused policy, and political capture of EPA. That's why we need that independence. Like every other country in these islands, and all countries in Western Europe and virtually around the world. I think the Professor Emmerman quote says it all. So just with that, I think it's worth noting on a final point just how nature and people are intimately connected. The need to protect human life is tied to the need for independent Environmental Protection Agency. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have no option but to go to a vote now. I know other speakers, after the proposer sums up, I'm not allowed by procedures to hear any other voices. It's standing orders and have to honour it in this matter. No desire to cut you off. Thanks, Bert. Okay, and request for a recorded vote. Okay, so the motion is as presented, members, and we'll go to what type of a vote will we go to? Okay, so we're going to set up an electronic vote. Isn't that right? Does that take? It's ready to go, Donal? Okay, thanks very much. So members, get ready to vote and vote. You have a limited amount of time in which to do it. So. How do? Oh, right. One hasn't been set up yet. That's right. So the WebEx vote is up and running, but ours will be in the a minute or so. Is it now? Don't mind. You vote yet? Oh.
Just say we're just waiting for it to put on the, come across the screen, Chair, that's all.
Yep. We're waiting on it to end. Can you say that? You voted, Matthew? Did you vote? Did you vote?
Chair, sorry.
That's very good. So you're in a position to read out the result now? Okay, over to Alison then for the reading out of the result, members.
Okay, Chair, so we had 19 votes for, 7 votes against and 5 abstentions. So the motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. Now, members, we'll move to item 12.2, and this relates to review of old minerals permissions legislation, implementation of that legislation by either the Minister or the Department for Infrastructure. This is proposed by Councillor McAleer and it's seconded by Councillor O'Coffey. So just check my. Is your microphone not on, Emmett? Something wrong with the. Maybe. I think it's still in voting mode, all right? So we need to get it back some way. Yeah, change of screen will happen. As soon as that happens, Emmett, I'll bring you in. I've even the arrow on top of your name here. Such is my intent. Okay, over to the proposer now, please.
Perfect, thank you, Cormac Carlock. Yeah. Again, I'm taking the motion as read, and again, it's important to note that the North of Ireland is the only jurisdiction across Scotland, England, Wales and Ireland not to have implemented ROMPs. The review of all mineral permissions has been legislated for in Section 129 of the Planning Act and in Article 22 of the Planning Reform Order 2006 before that. The legislation, however, has never been commenced. In 2012, the Department of the Environment cited the objectives of ROMPs as being: number one, to ensure that all active mines and quarries in Northern Ireland have planning conditions that complies with modern environmental standards. This will bring Northern Ireland into line with the rest of the UK. Number two, to ensure that dormant quarries cannot be returned to use before their planning conditions have been reviewed. And number three, to ensure that the review process also meets the requirements of the Planning Regulations 99, which implements Council Directive. ROMPs has been delayed repeatedly by government because of the economic burden it would likely impose on the minerals industry here if quarry operators and minerals operators were required to apply modern-day environmental standards to historic operations. The successful lobbying by the Mineral Products Association, known at the time as the Quarry Products Association, is the reason why ROMPs was repeatedly delayed by ministers and senior officials within DOE when the Assembly was not sitting. In effect, those in power repeatedly placed the private interests of extractivism ahead of environmental protection in the North. Having successfully delayed ROMPs, MPA now supports its commencement and implementation. It is, however, important not to be fooled by the environmental rhetoric of its director, Gordon Best. The reason why MPA now supports the commencement and implementation of ROMPs is, first and foremost, down to economics. In a way, the delay on ROMPs has backfired on MPA as its members are currently being undercut by increasing numbers of rogue operators who are taking advantage of the lax environmental regulation of historic quarries here due to the absence of ROMPs. Whilst acknowledging that historic minerals operations can have a major impact on the environment, consecutive departments have not sought to quantify the degree to which environmental harm has occurred and is occurring because of the decisions not to commence ROMPs. When planning powers passed to councils in April 2015, so too did the responsibility for their implementation, and I would suggest the liability for ROMPs. I believe some councils complained that the resources to undertake ROMPs did not accompany the responsibility, and it's now a major and resource-intensive exercise. Because of the departments, and that's plural departments, repeated delay of ROMPs, environmental harm will have taken place. It will fall to the council to assess the environmental harm and take whatever steps it considers necessary to address the legacy of decades of neglect on the part of DOE and subsequently DFA. In effect, in preventing councils from implementing a review of all mineral permissions since 2015, due to its failure to commence Section 129 of the Planning Act, DFA has built up considerable risk, liabilities and trouble for public authorities. In the interests of fairness and accountability, the department should be asked to legislate, to take back responsibility for the review of all mineral permissions and to sort out the mess it has created, then dumped on public authorities. There's also the argument that administering ROMPs from within the department would also eliminate any risk of inconsistency of approach if undertaken by 11 distinctive public authorities. So with that in mind, I'm making the proposal or the motion as written. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Gordon Abbott. And now to the seconder.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I will not be long here. I think Councillor McAleer was he made all the relevant points, and I think it's a fairly, uncontroversial issue, really. The fact that there has not been a long promise, like since 2006, review of old minerals permissions conducted by ministers, I think tells its own story, and it goes back to the issue which I raised earlier about the power and the authority of vested interests in Stormont and how they rule the roost, it seems to me, that this has now not been action since 2006, despite being incorporated in the Planning Act of 2011, and then subsequent to the local government reform of 2015. This responsibility, this liability now has been passed to local authorities, and this is not acceptable. We all know local authorities are underfunded. We're seeing many liabilities being transferred without the funding that is needed to protect the ratepayers of our district. And we are probably more exposed to old minerals permissions and the consequences of pollution events and inconsistencies than other areas. So I think it's a non-controversial. Personally, I would be surprised if anyone would vote against this, but it is absolutely important that we do demand this. And unfortunately, we don't have a Minister for Infrastructure, or perhaps even the prospect of a Minister for Infrastructure, but we're going to have to continue to demand that this is implemented. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much, Donald. Thanks very much, Councillor Coffey. And I'm going to go next to Councillor Withers.
Thank you, Chair. I support the motion and share the concerns that are outlined in it, including the risks to the environment that have been caused by the delay in implementing the legislation, which will ensure that historic mineral permissions comply with modern-day environmental standards. I note that earlier this year, Minister Mallon, when she was the Infrastructure Minister, had indicated an intention to legislate for this in the next Assembly mandate, but obviously that's not possible at this stage with no Minister or Assembly currently function. So right now that makes this a bit of an academic exercise, but nevertheless, anything that will reduce the administrative and financial burden on our council by placing the responsibility with the FIE is welcome, given the current financial climate that we are currently facing. So Sinn Féin will be supporting the motion. Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret. Councillor Irvine.
Thanks very much, Chair. Our party will take an opposite position to that, in that we're quite surprised actually with the content of the motion, because it effectively is talking about handing powers back from local authorities to the centre, which we as a party think is a dangerous precedent to set. I'm not sure whether the proposer and seconder have actually thought through the ramifications of the motion, and maybe they have, and there's some other thread running through it. But we would not agree with the proposal, which could lead to other possible devolved functions heading back to the centre. We would have thought that this should have been a discussion that we would have had with our relevant officers, first of all, before taking a position as a council on it. And I know it has been talked about in the planning committee and other arenas in regard to the outturn of it, but nothing substantive has actually come of that. And I would have thought that we would need guidance at least before we make an educated decision. And based on that, our party will not be supporting the motion. We will be voting against it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Are there any other indications? I don't think so. So, okay, back to Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks again to the councillors who have contributed. I want to start by thanking Councillor O'Coffey for seconding the motion brought to us. Again, there's overlap with the previous motion. There's talk there of vested interest, and obviously the concern about the cost to this district and to this council. The previous motion was more to do with the environmental cost. This time we're actually talking about the economic pressures and economic cost on top of the environmental cost to this district area, and again others. I appreciate Councillor Withers' input as well, and he's 100% correct that the previous Minister, Minister Mallon, had supported this in her tenure as Minister. Unfortunately, it didn't get across the line at that stage, and with all that's happened since then, the subsequent Minister hasn't got it across the line yet either. But I think it's important that we as a council get the ball rolling on this. It is something that needs to be looked at right across the board. It's a commitment that's been, I think, 16 years in the making, and unfortunately it hasn't come about yet. We're talking day in and day out at the minute about the cost to the ratepayer and the cost to people across this district. This is simply something financially and in terms of people power that we don't have the expertise and we don't have the surplus to deal with. I'm aware of, and I'm sure other councillors are aware of, decisions made in other district areas right across the north that have resulted in legal proceedings. And again, that's something that I don't want to see happening to this council. It is something undoubtedly that the department has more access to and more resource to deal with. And I think that's the route that we should be going. It's something that was committed to. My understanding, it was agreed primarily on a cross-party basis that it was going to be something that was going to be proceeded with. But unfortunately, to date, it hasn't come about. So with all of that in mind, Chair, I'm happy to make the proposal as brought. Thank you.
Okay. So you've made your proposal formally. It has been seconded. There's an indication of dissent from at least one grouping. So, okay, recorded vote being requested for. That takes us into the digital voting territory again. So again, Donald, if you can assist. Gay Byrne in the Late Late Show used to refer to Colette, so we have to refer to Donald. Roll it there, Colette. Do you remember that? Pretty sure you're too young. Remember that, Stephen? McGuire definitely remembers it. The chamber as well then, Donald? Needs to be activated? Yep. Okay, you're now in a position to help us with the result, Alison.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There are 19 votes for, 12 votes against, so the motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. So Donald, help to get my screen back for the way I need it for the third motion. Be coming to you shortly here, Donald, just whenever I have the ability to do that. 2, 3, 4. I think I'm ready to go now. Thanks, Donald. Okay. So, members, in terms of the agenda, we're now at item 12.3, the third substantive motion of the evening, and the proposer will be Councillor O'Coffey and Councillor Deehan will be the seconder. Now, we have had an amendment tabled, and that has been uploaded to decision time, isn't that right? For your benefit, members, and that will be proposed by Councillor Maguire. And the seconder will be Councillor Feely. Okay, so that's the order in which I'm going to take things. Then it'll open up to debate, as you know, members, and we'll take it from there. And I might need a wee bit of support and guidance from the Chief Executive on procedural matters, including how to interpret 19.19 in the Standing Orders, Alan. Give me a shout if I'm bit. Okay, so over to you, Councillor O'Coffey.
Chair, can I just ask before I commence, am I speaking here on my initial proposal or on the amendment? Thank you.
On your initial proposal, 5 minutes, please.
Okay, thanks. I'm not going to really speak that long because I think every councillor in this chamber knows the situation. I do want to thank Councillor Deehan, who's always really in the lead when it comes to health service, given our specialisms and our experience, but also I know that's something that she holds really dear. I also want to thank all the other councillors, in particular Councillor Blake, who I know has been very proactive in trying to expose what's happening. But many other councillors from many other parties have attended the meetings that have been called. And I think it's important that we all as a council stand together really on this issue. The community need us to stand together. And we need to stand for the strongest possible action and opposition to this threat. And this is a genuinely existential threat, I think, for this community if this proceeds. Once this goes forward, the die will be cast and the dominoes will inevitably fall. And that's really the intent of the motion as it is set out. I'm not really going to say much more than this on the following, which is I tried to keep this written in a way as it has gone forward that everyone should be able to support it. But I do not believe that this circumstance or this position we're in is accidental. I have heard it being justified by people high up in departmental circles in Belfast, and it is indeed coherent with every single major reform policy that has been adopted by Stormont in 20 years. So I think we need to recognise that. That said, we do need to act, and this calls for this council to act strongly. And one of the things I think we can do as a council and the body corporate is to actually take the lead on the legal challenge. And that is why this is specified and explicit in the motion that this needs to occur. If we do not take that legal challenge, I would fear that we are not going to be on the front foot. I think that the likelihood, and if you look at what's happened in the Daisy Hill previously, where this service has been cut, the decision was made literally overnight. There was no consultation. There was no equality impact assessment. There was no rural proofing, no consideration of human rights implications or even public health. Only 6 months after the event of a temporary overnight closure was there an initial consultation opened when everything was way past the point of no return. And I think that we as a council can act now before this comes at us. We need to be ready to launch a legal challenge as necessary, as set out in this motion. And I call for all councillors to support this. I think we need to stand together. Because if this goes ahead, it doesn't matter what community you're from, where you're from, you're going to suffer. And we cannot have this happening to our community. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Gormagat, thank you, Donal. I'm going to go to Councillor Deehan now.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to commend Councillor O'Coffey for bringing forward this very important motion, and I am delighted to second the motion, Chair. Chair, I have no doubt that this will be the greatest challenge that this council has faced in its tenure. Everyone should be in no doubt that what we are facing, i.e. the potential removal of emergency surgical services from the South West Acute Hospital, is, in my belief, the thin edge of the wedge. When we heard from the Chief Executive of the Western Trust, Neil Guckian, he really presented the case to us as if it was going to be a reality. But he really attempted to offer some consolation in that he said that the Trust was actively pursuing an overnight elective surgical centre for the South West Acute Hospital. Chair, that is good and we need that, but what we need more than that is the retention of our emergency surgical services. Because, Chair, as Councillor O'Coffey has said, we rely on those services to help maintain the status of the South West Acute Hospital as an acute hospital. And if we lose emergency surgery, then this will definitely impact on our other acute services. This is a serious threat to the health and well-being of our constituents. Chair, you will very well remember the major challenge that the community in Omagh faced when we were threatened with the loss of our acute services. Unfortunately, that was a battle which we did not win. So now we throw our support behind the retention of acute services at the South West Acute. Everyone must work together. We must leave no stone unturned. I do believe that we are justified in challenging any decision to remove emergency surgery from the South West as soon as possible. The Minister has sought to provide reassurances that ongoing efforts will be made to recruit general surgeons to the South West Acute Hospital, but at the moment that prospect is not good, and I think alternative arrangements need to be urgently explored. But the challenge for this council...
Concluding point, Josephine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The challenge for this council is to maintain the status quo, and I would urge everyone to be united in their voice and determination to ensure that those services are protected. I'm happy then to second this motion, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Deehan. I'm going to go now to Councillor Maguire in relation to an amendment that he has tabled. And I'll bring Tommy into play here.
Gurum, I'm going to carefully, I take it all members have had an opportunity to read the amendment, Chair. So I will address the amendment and the issue at hand, and I believe the services provided at the SWA have been and continue to be vital to meeting the healthcare needs of the community in Fermanagh and South Tyrone, and indeed Fermanagh and Omagh district. They're particularly important given our geographical location in the northwest of the island, close to the border and significant distance from the regional services in Derry and Belfast. Everyone has the right to appropriate access to medical treatment, particularly urgent and emergency care. The South West has provided these services to the community for many years, and we want to see it to continue to meet the urgent and emergency healthcare needs of the people. It's of little surprise then that the many of us that have raised our concern in response to statements from the Western Trust regarding the fragility of emergency general surgery in the SWA. In that sense, I welcome the opportunity to discuss this issue publicly here in the Council and with other parties and elected representatives. I have no doubt the concerns of my constituents will be echoed by those of other elected reps here tonight. It's important in that sense that we work together to voice the concerns and indeed the hopes of the people for the future of the South West Hospital. For our part, Sinn Féin have been putting not just our concerns, but the concerns of our community directly to the Western Trust and indeed the Department of Health. We did so during the cross-party briefings by the Trust to elected representatives, including councillors, on the 17th and the 18th of October. Sinn Féin MLAs and MPs reiterated our concerns and the sense of uncertainty in the community, given the lack of clarity on the future of services from the Trust at a meeting last week on the 26th of October. Our health spokesperson and former chair of the Health Committee, MLA Colm Gildernew, also raised this issue at a cross-party meeting with the then Health Minister Swan last week. And Sinn Féin MP for Fermanagh South Tyrone also wrote to Minister Swan to urge him to work with the Trust to ensure important services are delivered. What we need now is openness and transparency from the Trust so the public understand the current situation facing emergency surgical services and what that might mean for other services. We need honest and clear assurances given to the public about what the Trust is doing to recruit the necessary surgeons.
Concluding point, Tommy, please.
We all know the health system in the North is under severe pressure, and change will be required to ensure we meet the health needs of our people here and improve their health outcomes. Guramagat Carley, that will do for now. Thank you, Chair.
Guramagat. And then moving then to Councillor Feely.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I'm not going to go over everything that Tommy says there and other councillors has said there, because we all are in agreement with that. But well, I'd be one of the councillors that would be living the furthest away from the South West Acute Hospital. Down is a half an hour drive or 25 miles away. People I represent lives further away, down at the border, down at Manger, Lochel, down at the Donegal, Leitrim border, on up to Belcoo, into Derrygonnelly, Monaid, Bow, Connolly, very far away. So, God forbid, and I'm just saying if, it's a small word, but it means a lot, that the emergency operations was taken away from the Southwest, and them people, including myself, my family, anybody down there, would have to travel to Craigavon or even travel to Derry. Not a hope. It would take 2 hours, 2.5 hours to get that far. Anybody involved in a road traffic accident, a heart attack, or a young lady, or a lady with maybe an emergency C-section. Like, it's not about politics at this stage. It's about people's lives that we're talking about here. There's going to be lives will be lost. And that is the major reason we have to keep these in our local hospital. And I know there's a lot of politics being played out of it, like political football, people organising this, organising that, doing this, doing that. It's all about that. We should be all together and all fight for these together to save them. And I know a lot of councillors here, including myself, has been involved in a lot of campaigns to save different things, save our schools, save our banks, save our clinics, not clinics, health centres, sorry, that's what I was trying to say. Some of them we were successful in them, and some of them they had closed, but you have to put up a fight, and put up a real good fight, and do as much as we can to save them, so that people's lives won't be lost. So in saying that, I'll second Tommy's proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Alison, the nature of the debate now is it around the substantive motion or the amendment? Okay, so the debate is directed at the amendment in that sense. Okay, so Councillor Coyle.
Chair, sorry.
Okay, you want to delay? Okay. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the main reason behind any threat to the surgery in the South West Acute Hospital is that of recruitment of necessary staff. The scaremongering going on at this present time would not attract anyone to think of applying for a position if they thought that services would come to an end. Job security is a big factor in any job, and especially when we are in the middle of a cost of living crisis. When the South West Acute Hospital was built, it was furnished with the latest technology and facilities to go with it. I think I'm correct in saying that the hospital was set up to train people in the medical profession. If that is the case, should we not be looking at maybe using the new South West College in conjunction with Queen's and Ulster University to help train new medical personnel instead of them travelling to Londonderry or Belfast. As we see too often, once the young people leave this district, very few return, and maybe ask the Department of Health to look at incentives to attract more personnel to the area. We must also be wary of the ambulance service and that they would be able to cope with the situation if emergency surgery was to stop at the Southwest Acute Hospital. We need to be working in partnership with the Western Trust and Department of Health. To all, we can help with this situation, but we must bear in mind that if the Council proceeds to use legal avenues to fight this, there could be a big financial cost. At the recent Sub-Health Committee meeting with the Western Trust, we were told by the Chief Executive of the Trust that funding was not a problem. He reported that some medical professions cited that they had no one in the Southwest Acute Hospital that they could talk over a problem with, should they have one. It's been said that there was very little to do in the area. Surely it's time we looked at improving our infrastructure to help gain new business, to improve our road and rail network. We often hear that we have good tourist facilities in Fermanagh, but that doesn't help us gain more professional people in the area. Our infrastructure needs to be upgraded. This means we need the dual carriageway extended to cover Fermanagh, especially Enniskillen. The road infrastructure upgrade is needed, as this is a big obstacle in gaining new business. And I think it's about time we did something about it.
Concluding comment, Paul.
For far too long, members of our families have moved away because they say there's nothing here. Let us see if we can change that. Chair, the message we need to be sending out tonight is that Southwest Acute Hospital is open for business and it is hiring. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now, the order of speakers is determined, as you know, not by me, but by... So moving on to Paul now. Councillor Big.
Thanks, Chair. I want to make this clear from the very start that this is not scaremongering, that this is not a political football by any means. This is people's lives that are at stake here. I'm not trying to sound melodramatic when I say it, but this is the reality of the situation. That people will die when transferring patients between here and Altnagelvin or Craigavon or Belfast. That's the reality of the situation. So when it comes to somebody saying scaremongering, we need to make it clear that this is not scaremongering. The very real reality here is what is going on is a deliberate attempt to run down our services in the Southwest Acute Hospital. So then is when you refer to people's jobs and livelihoods being put at stake. But at the very first point has to be made clear that it's people's lives. And for me, I would be opposed to this amendment that's come forward this evening because for me, it's not possible to deliver the services that's mentioned here without emergency general surgery. I'll refer to a letter that was published last week in the Sunday Independent, and it came from consultant obstetrician and gynecologist, where it says, the suggestion that we will be able to deliver an uninterrupted obstetric and gynecology services with no access to a surgeon while in a rural district general hospital such as ours is frankly inconceivable. We cannot, in a situation where we are in theatre with a major complication and a general surgeon cannot be mobilised to assist within a timely fashion, the suggestion of no surgical support in a rural area with poor road networks to neighbouring hospitals is frankly unacceptable. So that is very laid out quite clearly that you cannot carry forward and lose your emergency general surgery and still continue on as normal. So in terms of working constructively with a trust that fails to be truthful with us and honest with us, that is from the very start comes out with very fancy glossy terms about elective centres of these kind of things, is the reality is pointed into what impact it will actually have on people's lives. Don't try to gloss over it with some fancy terms, and that's what the Trust is trying to do. So for me, work constructively. We're calling on the Department of Health to step in now, because my confidence in the Western Trust delivering for the people of this area is failing me at the minute.
Thank you. Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm absolutely shocked that that word scaremongering was used by another councillor. It was used a couple of weeks ago when Councillor Blake first raised this. And lo and behold, what Councillor Blake said was true. And when it's a confirmed threat, it's utterly ridiculous that someone is saying that this is scaremongering at this stage. The Trust have confirmed that this is happening. And to say that this is what's having an impact on and the recent coverage is what's having an impact on recruitment is an absolute nonsense. This has been a problem for months. I know Councillor Blake and many others have been talking to local staff for a long, long time about this. We've discussed it in previous meetings. I'll not rehash over that, but this is an existential threat to our hospital. As has already been laid out, no emergency services essentially means no services. You have a glorified primary care centre, and primary care centres are all well and good, but that's not what the South West Acute Hospital should be. It would be the end of an acute hospital in Enniskillen. And travel times will be the biggest obstacle faced by people here. Every minute matters in an emergency, and lives will be lost. People will die if this decision happens. And NIAS have already indicated they don't have the ambulance cover should this happen. And it was mentioned about young people leaving the district. People my age are saying to me, and people who are thinking about families, if this happens and there's no maternity as a result of this, what's the point of even making a home in Fermanagh if I can't have my kids in here? What's the point? So this could lead to rural depopulation in the county if we're not careful. And when it comes to financial resource and cost to ourselves, what's the point in this council even existing if we cannot defend something as vital as our hospital services when lives of people in the district are on the line? It's not helped by the fact that there's no Stormont, but this council can show leadership. You know, regarding the amendment, it's already been pointed out that the services can't exist without emergency services or emergency surgery, and that line to work together constructively. I, like Councillor Blake, don't get the impression the Trust want to work together constructively. Otherwise, they wouldn't have went to such lengths with the department to deny what was happening just to come out, confirm it 2 weeks later. They would have contacted us and been constructive then. They refuse, and myself and others have written to the Trust and the Chief Executive and many other councillors and many members of the public and many journalists looking answers to questions, and quite often they refuse to give written responses. That's not constructive thinking, and that's not constructive working, and I too am losing faith in the Trust here, and I'll be against the amendment. I think we need legal action here, and I'll be supportive of the motion, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coyle.
Thank you, Chair. As members may know, I took a job in SWA because I wanted there to be supporting the surgeons, doctors, nurses, porters and domestics and catering staff. It is a fantastic place to work. And, you know, the Trust, when we had the meeting with the Health Committee, they said no decision has been made, and that was false. There was no consultation with the general public. It is unfair that they have, you know, hoodwinked us as a council, and no rural proofing has safeguarded us. As you know, I'm not a fan of the rural proofing bill because it just doesn't have the teeth to protect our rural constituents. The roles that are out to be filled are trust-wide and not, you know, especially for SWA. And the general surgery and the watery excuse that the Western Trust had given us that, oh, surgeons specialise in things now and we can't get general surgeons. That is not the case. You know, maybe it is that they're, you know, medical students are being handpicked for places, and then obviously we don't, you know, we're not featured in that. And the Royal College of Surgeons, we don't have the general surgery in SWA is not accredited, and that is a threat, you know, and that shows to surgeons that you know, they need a safe place to work. And we support the first motion because it gives us, we support the legal avenue to fight for our constituents, and I think the second one doesn't do that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Swift.
Burmagat, Cahirlock. Certainly, the big point that I want to make here tonight on behalf of my constituents and the Erne West DEA rural, as it is the very fact that we cannot afford this to be made a political football. We really cannot afford to be political where health is concerned. And I think a lot of members have already stated that clearly here this evening. And with regard to both the motions tabled, they both contain the salient points. And we, as a council, are already stated to work to retain the full suite of services at SWA. And we have had many meetings over the past couple of weeks, and we have engaged with WHSCT. The problem is the public out there are in the absence of all of the facts that we are already aware of. And again, we can become victim of Chinese whispers. So we need to identify some of the falsehoods and the mistruths that are being interpreted in the wider public. And this is for and on behalf of our citizens. We need to be very clear. We need to hear frank and candid statements coming forward as soon as they know, and it must be sooner rather than later. We have been assured that no decision has been made yet. So I do take some comfort in that, and I am remaining very hopeful. And we are going to continue to take the stated position to retain the full suite of services at SWA. Now, within both motions, I note there's a question to write to the Minister and all of that. And we must remember and recall vividly how many times have we already asked to meet the Minister and even respond to some of our letters. And we've only received a response that's tabled here tonight on our agenda from the Diary Secretary to ask us to resubmit a request to meet after the 20th of October, you know. But the other 7 requests haven't even been acknowledged. So what does that say? I'm suggesting here that members would agree tonight then to bypass those people who are already ignoring us and contact the Permanent Secretary at the Department of Health for that. We need to go straight to the top and straight for the jugular, for the want of a better expression. Again, we were told that we're not removing acute surgery, and that's why I'm glad to see that there's more discussions now about the emergency general surgery, and there are differences between the two. So all in all, we want to hear the truth of what is going on, what's happening. People will vote on their feet. We are in a very precarious position, and we need everybody's help, and everybody's voice should and must be heard. Gurmagad.
Thank you, Bernice. Moving on now to John. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. Goes without saying how much this has caught the attention of the local community, and something which I, along with my colleagues in the Ulster Unionist Party, were staying in regular contact with former Minister Robin Swan right up until the final hours in his job on Thursday evening. And let me be clear, despite what the Western Board may be insinuating or trying to say elsewhere, there had been no decision taken at that point. I'm sure there may well be more to come to light over the coming weeks, but my understanding is that the Minister had asked for a number of assurances and clarifications, but by the time of leaving office, answers to some of those key points were still outstanding. In the absence of a Minister, as well as with a still no functioning Assembly of Stormont, the role of this council, along with local MLAs and MPs, is more important than ever. Indeed, we must be especially observant that the trust, supported by the new body, the SPPG, within the Department of Health, don't now try to use the increased political uncertainty at Stormont and the recent Department of Ministers as a means to try and slip through decisions which otherwise would have required final ministerial sign-off. There are key outstanding issues, as far as I can see. The first is surrounding those issues around recruitment that we've already covered. The second is whether there's actually the capacity for greater levels of emergency general surgery across both Altnagelvin and Craigavon sites. Further is the risk assessment that has been undertaken to give us assurance that people can be transferred from the SWA in the emergency scenarios. And a crucial issue exists of which the UUP are still to hear any substantive answer to in relation to this transfer of patients. Whilst it's all fine and well for the Trust to say they hope they will first stabilise patients at SWA I'm still waiting to hear how patients will be supported throughout the onwards travel. Are we seriously saying that the ambulance service, with all the well-recorded pressures that it's already under, will be able to spare vehicles and crews locally to make 3, 4 or 5 transfers that would be necessary each day? Whilst there's previously some ill-informed speculation about a planned trip of Robin Swan coming to the SWA, being no doubt, the loss of the Minister from the helm of the department now presents a real peril, and that's why this council needs to double down and hold the Trust to account to save the services at the SWA.
That's it, John. Thank you. Corleor McGill and Kate Canchorella, Emmett McLear, next speaker.
I'm going to start by thanking both Councillor O'Coffey and Councillor Deehan for bringing this very timely and very important motion to Council, and to those councillors who went before me on speaking before the substantive motion and not, unfortunately, the watered down amendment that was brought. I have a number of very serious concerns, I suppose, having listened to the input from speakers since the amendment's been brought. And obviously, I'm not going to make any friends in saying this, but the use of language by some of the members that it's time we started on moving on improving local infrastructure, time we started investing in local infrastructure, coming from members of political parties who have been in power here for decades. And suddenly now we're to believe that the people of Tyrone and the people of Fermanagh are of any interest to them is one that's quite hard to take. And I would question maybe why tonight that's decided to be made a priority. Use of terms like scaremongering and playing politics is, as a number of other speakers have said, it's disgraceful. It's disgusting that an issue like this is something that's being thrown about and lobbied about like a political football. This is something that should unite everyone in this chamber, and the fact that there's amendment to this is actually disgraceful. I'm not a resident in Fermanagh, but people in my district and my county know what happens when you lose emergency services. Many members are old enough to have been through that before. Currently, there's no maternity provision in County Tyrone. To hear the threat of that now being passed on to our neighbouring county is something that I would take very seriously, and I appreciate that other members do likewise. The concern I would have is that from listening to speakers, there already seems to have been a behind closed doors agreement made by the two main parties. And that's very concerning, not only at a council level, but going forward and ultimately who's going to be making this decision. That's hugely, hugely concerning. And I don't know how members are going to go out, whether it's December or whether it's next April, May, June time, to knock doors and canvass for votes and look people in the eyes, depending on the position they've taken tonight. And I don't say that lightly, Chair. Councillor Swift quite rightly raised the concern, and Councillor Ganling too, about the idea behind rural depopulation. And we have to query, is that being done by design? Is the aim ultimately to make Fermanagh and Tyrone, Fermanagh and Omagh, a sacrifice zone that then is open to the likes of fracking, to the likes of mining, without any intrusion? And I will relate, I'll finish with this, Chair, just of a personal experience of my own family, my own wife being down in the SWA to give birth to our son. And if we didn't have emergency services there, I wouldn't be sitting here tonight. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Moving now to Corleor Coyle, Debbie Coyle.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so there was a reference to scaremongering, and it, right from the beginning, that word was used, and it definitely is not scaremongering. Job security was also mentioned, and that's for the Trust to secure jobs for workers. Instead, they prefer to often use locums and agency staff, which does not provide job security. So that's an issue there. And while the Trust are saying there's small numbers of emergency patients, then it'd be interesting to know how they're widening that out so that bordering counties, and work together with bordering counties, as was intentional when the hospital was first built. Whilst we have a health and social care committee or working group, I'd like to propose that rather than write to whoever, that we request an immediate meeting as a group of councillors with the trust so that we can have an open and frank.
Debbie, just on a procedural point, I want to bring in the Chief Executive.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
No, Chair, certainly it's just to advise we must deal with the amendment as presented.
Right, okay.
And certainly if
okay,
there are
I'll
any
come in
subsequent
with that
actions
after
on
then.
conclusion of the motion, it could
No
then be
problem.
considered. Sorry, Chair.
Okay. So I'm supporting the motion, the amendment of the motion, sorry. And I think it's not changing it in any way, it's just adding to it. And I think it's quite, you know, unnecessary for people to make criticisms. We are trying to work together across the board, and there's real, I've seen text messages myself this evening that are quite concerning to me, where people are playing quite, you know, unacceptable politics with this very serious issue that is going to affect me, my family, and everybody else's in this chamber. So I'm supporting the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Moving now to Corlior Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to make my apologies for being late for the meeting. I was at another meeting in Listonskee, which was organised by the community, and it was a planning and organising an information night with regards to this very issue. The room that was booked was full of the brims and the hallway leading up to the room. There was a lot of energy in the room, there was a lot of anger in the room, and people, actually, this motion tonight was actually mentioned by one person, and it was fully supported. Legal action is what the people in that room wanted, and there was a broad range of people from all sorts of political persuasions and maybe no political identity, but what they did say is, come election times, they will be asking what the stance of the politicians are. So I would ask you very carefully to consider what you are supporting tonight. But anyway, that's not to get off the topic, but yeah, I think the amendment, as Emmett has said, is a watered down version. I think it takes the teeth out of the very important motion proposed by Councillor O'Coffey and Councillor Blake. Legal action is the only route we can take now. To say there could be more engagement with the trust, which has given us very little information, in fact, and some would say misleading information for a long time now, I think is pointless. I think legal action is the road to go. I would not support the amendment. I'll be supporting the motion as outlined. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now, you just have to get me bearings. Maybe you'll help me, Alison. If Donald wanting to come in, of course. Okay, okay. Aye. So I want Donald to be the last speaker, obviously, on the amendment now. So no other speaker can come in on the amendment if I go to Donald next. So, Councillor O'Coffey.
Very good. Thank you. And I want to thank Sinn Féin for making this amendment, but I certainly can't agree with it. I want to start out by stating that I am not one bit precious about accepting or having corrections or amendments to my what's gone forward. It's as far more important than anything, any individual. We need to do this for our community. I hope people will recognize that the motion before us was purposefully not party political. There's lots of things I would have put into this motion if it was to express my political stance on these matters, but I wrote it in the will and genuinely trying to secure cross-party, cross-community support. Our community needs us to take the strongest possible stand on this matter. I believe that if we stand and stand up for ourselves and campaign, we can reverse this threat, we can avoid it, we can save acute services, but if we do not, I really believe this is existential for our community. and I want to pay tribute to all those who have stepped forward to date. All of that said, I am genuinely highly disappointed and to some degree shocked at the amendment. It undeniably seeks to water down the motion. It removes what is an explicit commitment for this council to take a legal challenge should the service be removed overnight, and instead it offers an alternative and explicit course of direct engagement with the WHSCT and the DOH, including the words working together constructively, which have already been stated. It also openly suggests and implies, if you read it, that it is somehow possible for emergency surgery to be removed without this undermining maternity, anesthetic, stroke, and cardiology. And I just want to point as two pieces of evidence, two quotes out of the Review of Emergency Surgery, which has been published by the Department of Health, which admits that, inverted commas, invariably there is a conflict between scheduled elective and unscheduled emergency care. Second is that it also identifies clinical interdependencies, including radiology, diagnostics, interventional laboratory services, gastroenterology, endoscopy, pediatric cardiology. And as Councillor Blake has correctly stated, obstetricians have gone on record to actually highlight that this is going to have an impact on them.
Donald, thank you.
So I think that we cannot accept the watering down. I plead with all parties to support the original motion. I genuinely believe, unless we take a legal challenge, it's not. And I'm not going to deal with the DUP quote, but I do believe, Councillor Stevenson, when you're talking about a big financial cost, the cost to this community of losing acute services is way beyond anything that we should ever countenance. So I call for a recorded vote. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of sequence, what we do next is we're going to put the amended motion to a vote. That was proposed by Councillor Maguire and seconded by Councillor Feely. Okay, and I think I heard Donald saying he would like a recorded vote there. So that's obviously going to happen. And we're going to go to the amendment now. We're going to set up the vote with our IT team's help.
Okay, Chair. So in terms of the amendment, there were 15 votes for and 16 votes against, so the amendment is defeated.
Okay, the amendment is defeated. And do we vote
And one
now?
abstention. Now we would go to Councillor O'Coffey for his concluding comments on the motion.
And not to vote on this.
And then we
vote
proceed then
on
to the motion, which is as presented.
Okay. Okay, so Councillor O'Coffey will try to. Yeah, I'm about to offer you concluding comments, Donald, here, but the screen currently doesn't allow me to do this because access to your name is blocked. It'll come online, I'm sure, shortly. Okay. So, members, what we're doing now is we'll be going to a vote on the substantive motion shortly, but I'm going to facilitate Councillor O'Coffey to
Right, formally.
sum up. Yeah.
So I sum up what.
You have 3
sorry.
minutes. You have 3 minutes.
To sum up the discussion.
Yeah.
Well, okay, the amendment has been defeated, so therefore the substantive motion proceeds, and I would call on all councillors to support this. I think our community requires us to do so, and I would just like to end really with I think we can win this. This is something that is a matter of political will. I know it runs against the thrust of extant policy of the last 20 years coming out of Stormont, which is about closing small rural hospitals, acute hospitals. But we need this, our community needs this. We have to defend this, and everyone has a part to play in that. And I hope everyone can come together behind that. And I hope to see people, once this goes through, come out and support every campaign that's going against this issue, on this issue. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to proceed to the vote. Can I interpret, okay, is there any indications, are there any indications of dissent? If there aren't any indications of dissent, I think this motion will go through, the substantive motion. I may not have to go to a digital vote. If I'm going to allow the opportunity for the dissent to be expressed now, in the absence of that, I'm going to interpret that substantive motion is now agreed. Okay, agreed, members? Agreed. Agreed. Okay, so that brings item 12. Have you a point of orders? Councillor McCann, has to be a point of order.
On the chair, I'll just read the items on there. I'd like to make a proposal, not that far away from the motion.
Okay.
It's along the lines of the SWA, that's okay.
Okay.
I'm just trying to
Okay,
find
I think I'll
weird
take
spot.
that under matters arising, or matters arising may offer that opportunity. I have to go by procedural advice on
Right,
this,
okay.
Stephen.
Okay,
Okay,
fair enough,
so you
yeah,
will have an
okay.
opportunity.
Sign, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And, okay, I'll just get my bearings here. So. Aye, okay. Yep. Okay. Okay, members, we're now at item 5 in the agenda, matters arising. And how many pages are we dealing with there, Alison? 18. So go through one by one. Okay, page by page. Page 1. Page 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9.
Chair, please.
Okay, over to you,
Uh,
Alison.
Just on page 9, Chair, it was the resolution in relation to the motion on the Bally nursing home, just to draw members' attention to the correspondence received from the Minister of Health dated 17th of October 2022, which sets out the Minister's previous position and remains satisfied with the assurances provided from the trusts involved.
Okay. Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. In regard to this correspondence, I just want to express my dissatisfaction and lack of, I think that this takes us no further forward. I'm happy to propose to note it, but the issue really is that when everything is boiled away, there was a nursing home in which there were 53 residents, and within a short period of being closed, 20 of those residents had died. That is 3 times the frequency that was associated, mortality rate that was in the home for the 18 months preceding the decision to close it. Many of those who died were actually residents of this council area, approximately half. And all we have had really around this are assertions and I'm satisfied without any evidential assessment. There's been no coroner's investigation, and we are no further forward on this. And I don't think that that's in any way acceptable. And I would just have to say I am happy. I've been informed by family members that this is now proceeded to a police. They brought this to the police. So I think at that stage, this council really cannot say much more, because this could become a matter for a police investigation. But I don't think that this response takes us any way further. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I will second the noting of the correspondence, and like Councillor O'Coffey, Chair, I do want to express my disappointment at the contents of this letter. Minister Swan indicates that he's satisfied with the assurance from the Trust that every necessary step was taken to ensure the transition process proceeded to ensure residents settled within their new homes, but it really doesn't explain the excessive number of deaths in what was really a very vulnerable population. I'm pleased to note the Minister says that he will ensure that lessons are learnt, that they are taken on board, and also that individual family members can continue to open discussions with the Trust in respect of the management of their relatives. And I suppose that is something positive, but really I feel that as a council we do owe it to our elderly residents and their families to ensure that every protection, every consideration is given to them. And I won't make any more comments beyond that, Chair, except to say that I feel that this response is inadequate, and it really doesn't reassure me in the least, Chair. I have had relatives contact me whose loved ones have died, included in those 20 deaths. And, you know, they are puzzled, they are shocked, horrified, and really demanding answers. And it's sad that they have to go to the police to try to find answers to the questions that they are entitled to have to ask and to be answered in a really comprehensive manner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And moving on then, in the matters raising, pages 10 and 11. 11, over to you, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just to highlight to members, just in relation to the motion the Council adopted in relation to the Justice for Noah O'Donoghue campaign. So we've received 4 letters here, Chair. The first from the Ulster Unionist Party, the second from Derry City and Strabane District Council, the third from the Northern Ireland Office, and finally from the Minister of Justice. Just in relation to the letter from Derry City and Strabane, their correspondence sort of crossed with ours, so they will have received our letter of our adoption of the motion, in fact, prior to us receiving this. So, but they've all been grouped together under this item.
Okay. Can I take a proposal to note all 4 correspondence before I come to Councillor McAleer? I got it from Councillor Coyle and seconded by Councillor McAleer that we propose this and second the noting of all 4 items of correspondence. And with that, I'm going to go to Councillor McAleer.
Yes, Chair. Yeah, happy enough to record the noting. I think again the letters we've received are by and large very disappointing. They really tell us nothing new, and there's a lot of thoughts and sympathy expressed, but very little in terms of realistic action. And I acknowledge too, like, would be happy to support the request from Derry and Strabane District Council, and I'm mindful of the comments from the Chief Executive. Happy as well to note that since that letter has been penned to us, that there has been an accession to permit a jury on that particular case, which I know the family were really struggling to actually have permitted. I do have to take issue with the very first letter that we've received from the Ulster Unionist leader, and seemingly he disagrees that the investigation has not been rigorous, open and transparent. And to my mind, he's amongst a very small silent minority if that's his truly held belief, because I think the dogs in the street would know that there's something not right with this case. I'm not going to comment any more on the intricacies of it, mindful of ongoing proceedings. The NIO office does actually prompt the idea of contacting the police ombudsman in relation to what is done. I'm sure that may be an avenue the family may wish to go down at a future state, and that may be something we may wish to revisit following on from the public inquiry. But at the minute, I'll leave my comments at that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And okay, I have to go now to Councillor Coyle.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the previous councillor said most of what I was going to say, so I just want to agree with what he said, and I do think the letters are very, very disappointing. Although I'm glad to hear that the family are going to be able to have a jury, which is one step forward, but the correspondence is disappointing. And if we are writing back to Derry, then I support that as well, although
Okay, thank you.
understand it across.
Okay, so that was pages 10 and 11. Okay, moving on then to page 12 and 13 and 14. 14, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. Just to draw members' attention to the correspondence received from the Minister for the Economy. This was in response to the Council's correspondence and concerns regarding the award of the mineral prospecting licences, which had been reported previously. And we'd asked a few questions within that. One was obviously the recent publication of the health and safety findings against one of the named companies, and a query regarding the overall monitoring and compliance, and the Ministers responded on those.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll propose to note the correspondence. Just in doing so, on receipt of this, I'd like clarification or confirmation on two issues that are raised within the letter. The first one being the noted consultation responses seem to classify due diligence as dealing solely with something being satisfied that the applicant has the technical capacity and financial resources to carry out the proposed exploration work programme. That would seem to suggest there's no requirement on a particular moral or ethical code or history of business, no background checks on health or safety issues, which is what prompted this original intervention, or indeed issues of potential fraud or human rights abuses in historical workings are not considered. And I'm wondering, can we go back to the Minister and the Department to get explicit confirmation that that is the case, that they only look at the technical capacity and financial resources? The second proposal that I wish to raise is in relation to the requirement that a licensee provides regular reports of exploration activity in the licence area and cooperates with the department in regular monitoring and inspections visits. Can we clarify who verifies the reports that are submitted from the companies? And are these regular monitoring and inspection visits announced in advance, or are they carried out as unannounced visits with no advance communication from any member of the FE staff? And again, just in concluding, Chair, I would encourage all members to view the mineral prospecting licence map on the DFE website, which shows the extent and right across this district area that's currently under licence. And indeed, what's very striking is west of the ban, the amount of the area that is under threat from these toxic mining practices as opposed to our neighbours in the east. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Councillor Keenan.
I'd like to second both those proposals there. Thank you.
Okay. That's the noting and the actual proposals. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, and agreed, members. Okay, that's agreed. And we're going on now to page 15, page 16, page 17. And Councillor McCann, I'd be keen to bring you in on page 18. Councillor McAleer on page 17, is that right, Emmett? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's under item 1310, and the third of the letters that were noted just the last night. We didn't have time to discuss it just due to time pressures, but it's the letter from Cork City Council regarding prospecting licences. And I would actually propose that we respond to Cork City Council, thanking them for their letter of support, advising them that they can still lodge an objection to the planned toxic applications which are live on the planning system, and indeed to offer similar support to the council areas noted in the original correspondence. And by that, I would probably particularly reference Leitrim and Donegal. It may not be necessary to include Derry City and Mid-Ulster, as they're undergoing similar threats to ourselves, but primarily Leitrim and Donegal County Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Keenan.
Second that, Chairman.
Thanks very much. Okay, and that's agreed, members, as a course of action. So moving on then to page 18. Okay, you want to come in first, do you, Alison? Okay. Okay, Councillor McCann?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for letting me in. I just wasn't too sure where to come in procedurally in terms of this issue. So there's just been a fairly heavy debate in relation to the South West Acute Hospital and the threat to services. And as a local government authority, we're thinking, well, are we doing all that we can do as a council? And we could be doing more, possibly. So what more can we do? Well, I think what this council could do, Chair, is to convene an emergency council meeting open to the 40 members to have a one-item emergency agenda in relation to this issue and really put it out there and invite the Trust along to that meeting. Chief Executive of the Trust and his team to come down and sit here and listen to the concerns of the 40 members of this council representing the council area. And, it is that serious. I think that this here does merit such an action, Chair.
Okay, special council meeting with
Special,
the
I'd
Western
even go,
Health
well,
and Social Care Trust.
Standard Order states special council meeting, it's an emergency council meeting. In terms of,
Well done. Well done.
so that's
You
what
normally do
urgent
your
it is.
research, fair play. Okay, and I think next up in the speaking order is Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. Generally content, a good idea and a welcome proposal from Councillor McCann. The one thing I would ask that we have as part of this, and I'm happy to second it, is the health subcommittee meeting went into confidential very quickly, and a lot of members of the public were watching, and a lot of members of the public were very confused and worried by that. That worried people. So what I would ask is that in this meeting, everything's put in the public domain. We let the Chief Executive know that it'll be public and that he has to speak publicly on it and not just give a statement and go into confidential. Now, obviously, there may be some specifics you can't discuss, like specific staffing issues which may identify people, and that's 100%. We get that, but I would ask that message is made clear to the Chief Executive in the invite that it cannot go into confidential unless it is for very, very specific reasons, such as, say, a specific staff member being identified, but the majority of the discussion needs to be held in public committee, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I want, on behalf of the party, I want to support Councillor McCann's proposal. You mentioned the Chief Executive, Mr. Gockian. I would include his senior management team along with him. That is taken as read there. So, on behalf of the party, we're happy to support the meeting, and I take on board Councillor Gannon's points. There were reasons for that, but we're not going to that now. The Chief Executive for Borough Council, Alison McCullough, will be able to sort all those issues out with the Trust. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take it out. Councillor Gannon made that as a proposal, and I'm very happy to second it if he didn't. If he did, and if
there was another way of dealing with that, which was that Councillor McCann may be content to incorporate that into his proposal.
If Councillor McCann isn't content, then I'll propose it, Chair. Thank you.
Okay.
I agree in principle with what Councillor Gannon is saying, but I just looked at the Chief Executive to see how that would pan out in terms of logistics. Can we precondition a meeting? Obviously I fully understand the reasons and support them, but can we request an emergency meeting, but then precondition it that it would be held in the public domain? I don't know if that's something that we can do or should we do. I'll just seek some guidance from the Chief Executive and then I'll come to a decision then on that, Chair.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, Chair, I think certainly what the council could do would be to express the wish that as much as possible of the discussion should be held in public, specifically at the Health and Social Care Subcommittee meeting. The Chief Executive of the Trust advised that in accordance with our standing orders as well as the matters when we went into committee, which related primarily to human resource matters, could not be disclosed in public. So I think that we would restate, obviously, the concerns that have been raised here this evening. I don't think we can certainly not direct them to disclose matters in public, but we can say the council's expectation would be that as much as possible can or should be disclosed. And there were certainly, and members will obviously see, we'll have the minutes of the Health and Social Care Subcommittee to Policy and Resources next week. Certainly, in my opinion, there were some matters discussed in confidential business that I think would have been helpful if they were in the public domain. and
Okay.
that maybe that in the intervening period, matters have clarified for the trust to be able to do so. So we could reflect it, but I agree, if we condition it, I think you just run the risk of the meeting not proceeding at all.
Okay, so I think we're broadly content on how to proceed on that basis. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, I think I'm very much supportive of any mechanism to discuss and highlight this issue. Having said that, I definitely think that from what I'm hearing of the community, the days where closed meetings and the like is deemed acceptable are rapidly coming to a close. The people are looking for transparency from government that they're not getting. We're looking at a potential existential threat, as we all know, and we're having meetings where things are not being disclosed, and it's causing huge the darkness, is what I want to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I was going to raise the points that Donal raised there and Adam Gannon. At that meeting there last week, it wasn't only concern, it was anger. That it went straight into confidential anyway, orders.
Yeah.
Forgetting me words. But yeah, and as the Chief Executive said, there was some stuff that could have been in the public domain, and the public want accountability, they want transparency. There is no government operating here. We're the local government. We have to be accountable, be transparent. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Swift.
And I had made the point during the discussions of the motions about contacting the permanent secretary through the Department of Health as well. And I think that there's a fundamental and key aspect of all of this discussion. So I'm formally proposing that now. It wasn't picked up in your concluding remarks, Donal. I'm very disappointed.
Okay.
I'll have a seconder on that. Gurmag.
Councillor McAleer has seconded that. Okay, I want to come to Councillor McCann now to conclude this matter.
Thank you, Chair, and just very briefly, I want to make the point, and I think it's important that, this council is not in the business of doing business behind closed doors for the sake of it. That doesn't happen. Councillor O'Coffey is in this chamber long enough, as is others, to understand when we must go into committee and what the rationale for that is, and we don't do business behind closed doors unless it's a requirement. I'm open for open and transparent debate. It's important, this case is actually very, very important that this meeting happens and as much of it can be held in the public forum as possible. But Councillor O'Coffey and others are aware of the way that we must go into committee, and that's it, Chair. Leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. So, Alison, can you help me sum up on that series of proposals?
So I
Chair,
think,
I have my hand up if I can say something.
Yes, definitely, because I'll tell you why, because I didn't realise. Victor, it wasn't your fault, so I'm going to allow Victor in before I go.
I'll be very, very brief.
Yep.
Just if Councillor McCann was happy enough to include the chairman of the board of the trust to attend that meeting as well, because he seems to be an individual that never is in the public domain that much or whatever, but he's obviously an individual that has a lot of standing. So if Councillor McCann was happy to include that in the invitation as well, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Happy enough. I think Councillor Thompson addressed that point whenever he mentioned the Chief Executive and his senior team, so that would include the chairman, I would presume. So more happy, if that needs clarification, more than happy to include the chair.
Thank you.
As we know.
Okay. And Alison?
So, Chair, two main proposals then: that we would proceed to convene an emergency council meeting with a single item agenda regarding the South West Acute Hospital, obviously as a matter of urgency, that we would invite the Chief Executive of the Trust and the senior management team, including the Chair, to attend. We would advise the Council's view that as much as possible should be disclosed and discussed in public, and matters of a confidential nature should, as far as possible, be minimised. And then secondly, that on the proposal of Councillor Swift, seconded by Councillor McAleer, that we would also write to the Permanent Secretary of the Department of Health, again restating the Council's concerns and bringing those to his attention.
Okay, and that's agreed, members? Everything's agreed. Okay, thank you. We're going to go to item 6 now in the agenda, which is matters arising from a special council meeting on the 17th of October. So I have the document in front of me and it amounts to 10 pages. Okay, so matters arising, page 1, page 2, page 3, 4, and 5, 6 and 7. Yep.
Just Chair, it starts on page 7, but I suppose it's more accurately towards the end of the resolution.
Yep.
It is on the subject of Southwest Acute Hospital, but I think, Chair, it's necessary just that I clarify this matter. We've received, you'll just see the correspondence in the other folder, and this is from the diary secretary to Minister Swan, and we were asked, it's been referenced in the earlier discussion, that we would resubmit the invitation after the 20th of October. I think, Chair, just important that I clarify for members, so there have been 7 requests for a meeting with the Minister, none of which have been acknowledged. And the first reference that we had to the withdrawal of the surgical services at Southwest Acute Hospital was, as members are aware, on the 4th of October council meeting. It was also discussed at Environmental Services on the 5th. We then sent our first letter seeking the meeting specifically on this issue on the 7th of October. So for some reason, the only letter referenced is the special council meeting which issued on the 21st of October. So just to I think it can cause some confusion, but just to clarify that, and again, that's for noting. But I'll move on, Chair, just to the other, that was on the second resolution, okay? On page 10 then, Chair, 2 further items of correspondence to highlight to members. Firstly, we have received a response from it's in the other folder, from the NASUSI welcoming the council's support for its petition. And then finally, we have the letter from Lady Chief Justice, her office, the complaints office, regarding the council's representations around the judge's comments.
Okay, thank you. Emmett.
Yes, Chair, just to speak, I suppose, briefly on all of the above. I think, as has been noted there, the fact that it's not even actually the diary secretary, it's the assistant diary secretary to Robinson. So I don't know how many diaries he needs to keep. And really, from someone called Jim Larkin, I would have been expecting a wee bit better too, I have to say. Yeah, I take on board what's been said, and I think just with the uncertainty and the proposals that have gone forward tonight, there's no real need or worth in rehashing this one. I would be supportive, fully supportive, and happy to see the response that has come in from the students group, and hopefully all members have had a chance to look at that and sign up to the petition that has already gained over 1,200 people supporting it. I'm wondering, and I'd maybe take advice on this, is that something that we can promote through our council channels, or is that maybe not something that we do?
Okay.
If so, I would propose that we do that then. Okay. Just in noting as well and I'll note the correspondence there and the subsequent correspondence as well. The response, I suppose, from the Lady Chief Justice is very disappointing, I suppose, in terms of what's gone. It's very little different in terms of what has gone before and what the public statement was, I think. I think it's important just that we have raised this as a council and that it is an issue going forward that we seem to be monitoring and keeping an eye on. And just finally, in relation to the letter from Mount Lords, I suppose, it's something that, again, we're...
Just haven't reached that correspondence just yet, Emmett, so maybe...
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, thanks.
Fire that. Thank you, Chair.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Chair. I was just, I was going to come in, I guess I can second the noting of this, but the correspondence from the Assistant Diary Secretary for the Department of Health Minister, very... it's almost disappointing if you could amount that much, if that was the amount of energy you could rise by, seeing it. But it seems that we are held with some level of disdain, and as a council, the fact that we have now 7 occasions written to seek a meeting and nothing coming back, and then told that we should rewrite when there's a new minister in place, when the likelihood is that there may not be a minister in place for a long period of time, potentially. I have to say that the absence of government may provide a threshold through which all sorts of very reactionary and dangerous decisions are enforced, and that the only real opposition, in a sense, is coming from the councils, which are the last remaining democratic structures in our society that are functioning. And obviously the people need to really, they need to have their force felt, and that means coming out and mobilising again and again on these issues. And if they don't want to meet us, then we will, regardless, they will hear us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Alison, that's that. Okay, just maybe page 10 as well then. Okay, that concludes the matters arising in item 5 and 6. Okay, so we'll go to correspondence 11. How many items of correspondence are there, Alison?
We have one item, Chair, and then one in the other folder that we haven't considered yet. So
Okay,
two
no
in
problem.
total.
So we'll go to 11.1 then.
Yes, just from the Minister for Infrastructure, this followed, or the Private Secretary, this followed the Council's meeting with the Minister, and there were a number of issues that were discussed, Chair. One was the funding formula for roads, one was flood alleviation schemes, the wastewater treatment works, and specifically around PC21 interventions, and then lastly, a status update on the Omagh flood alleviation proposals.
Okay. I've got 2 indications here, one on WebEx, one in the chamber. I'll go to Matthew Bell and then Anne-Marie Donnelly. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'm happy enough to propose to note. But off the back of this, I would like to propose we write back to the Department of Infrastructure, specifically around the Omagh flood alleviation proposals. I'm happy to read that he's going to revisit the recent study for Omagh Town. That's fantastic. But with river systems, you can't just look at a specific area. You have to look both upstream and downstream. And although the village of Newton Stewart isn't an FODC, if we make changes to Omagh, that would be a detriment to our neighbours downstream. I think that would be that wouldn't be a very good thing to do. But we should also be looking upstream, because if we can reduce the number of litres entering Omagh, well, that helps with flooding in the town. So I'd like to propose we write to the Minister to specifically ask him, or the Department, sorry, as there isn't a Minister, if he is considering looking at the flood studies upstream and downstream from Omagh. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly next.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to second noting the correspondence. But I think it highlights, as usual, the lack of investment in rural areas. You know, value for money in terms of flood alleviation proposals, the wastewater treatment works, and any flood alleviation schemes. You know, they have to relook at how they assess the business case to determine how projects should proceed, because in rural areas, the value for money part of the business case will never stack up, and it leads then to lack of investment in rural areas in terms of development, you know, dealing with flood alleviation and so on. So I would ask maybe that if Councillor Bell could include that in his proposal, that we ask that the process is reassessed in terms of how rural areas are going to be sourced for infrastructure over the coming years, because if we continue as we are, you know, we're going to not see any investment in our infrastructure, whether it's the roads, flood alleviation, wastewater treatment, and it's detrimental to the rural areas. So if Councillor Bell would be happy to include that, I'd appreciate it.
It's just indicated, yes. Thank you, Councillor Bell, and thank you, Councillor Donnelly. So Matthew indicated his support of that as well, Anne-Marie. Moving now to Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Bell, for proposing that. I suppose if anyone had been around Omagh Town at the weekend, especially Saturday evening, they would have seen what we had. There was, you know, there was so much flooding around our main arterial routes into Omagh, Dublin Road, Campsie, you know, and if it wasn't for a flood defence wall, I don't know where we'd be. But I'm happy to support what Councillor Bell has proposed, and also the amendment by Councillor Donnelly. I'm happy to support on behalf of the party. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thompson. So that deals with that item of correspondence. Councillor Deehan, sorry.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Chair. And Chair, I want to welcome this communication from the Minister and his department, and in particular, the proposals to look again at the 2016 Omagh Flood Alleviation Plan. There is a recognition, Chair, that climate change is influencing our flooding, and I do think that the flooding issues which occurred at the weekend in our county town were truly, truly shocking. And whilst this letter refers to solutions that are economically viable, I think we must all bear in mind the human cost of flooding. And as you will be aware, Chair, there are many residents of Omagh town who perpetually live in fear of their properties being flooded. So I welcome this offer of looking again at that plan. And I think recent events will illustrate the urgency. There is a time frame of 12 to 18 months on this. I would hope that it would be nearer the 12 months than the 18. Still too long for those who live in fear of flooding, but certainly welcome this correspondence and supportive of Councillor Bell's proposals, seconded by Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair. And Chair, then we had 3 items of correspondence in the other folder. 2 have been dealt with. So just to refer members to the correspondence received yesterday from Mount Lourdes Grammar School in Enniskillen, and that was just in relation to the Council's letter about school uniforms, and which was welcomed by the school, but they've also asked that the awareness of their own interventions that they've put in place to good effect are made more public, certainly that members are aware of it, with a view to you also disseminating that information.
Thank you. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, happy enough to note this and note the content. Obviously, it's not ideal in that it's not tackling the issue at root source, but it's a very positive project that the school are running. And again, if that's something that the council can, through its social media or other outlets, prioritise or get that information out, disseminate that information, I'm happy to make that as a proposal too, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second the noting of this and second Councillor McAleer's proposal. I just want to add too, this correspondence was read at a Board of Governors meeting in Erin Integrated College, and they've asked me to reply on their behalf to convey that the school uniform can be actually purchased in most of the retailers or supermarkets like Tesco and Asda. And apart from the jacket, which they are looking into, they do have reusing and clothes banks within the school that people can leave the thing in again. So that's what I've been asked to convey. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Deehan.
Well, just to welcome this correspondence from Mount Lourdes, Chair, and I think it is a wonderful initiative to set up this free of charge uniform exchange. And I do hope that many other schools within our district council area will emulate Mount Lourdes in that regard. The only disappointing thing about the letter, and as has been referenced by Councillor McAleer, is that really it does not address the fundamental high cost of providing a school uniform, particularly when you include all the sports kits. And recently we had a discussion, Chair, at one of the neighbourhood renewal subcommittee meetings about the high cost of footwear for children, particularly for primary school children who are growing so rapidly and growing out of footwear. And it's important that schools take cognizance of the high cost of footwear and that they would appreciate the strain on families and really seek to minimise costs in this regard. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Josephine. Councillor Feely.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was coming on the same vein as Emmett and Josephine there about the cost of it, and I know myself buying 3 different school uniforms for kids going to different schools and footwear, football boots and all the rest, but that's it. No, it's just, is that the only reply we got back? And I know the whole school's got it. Do we get other replies? It's just,
Yes, Chair, we did receive a few others that were considered at last month's meeting. I think probably about 3 or 4 now in total.
Sorry, Alison, I missed myself.
Okay.
I thought we got more. That's it.
Okay, so various courses of action agreed there, members. Now, there isn't any notified, any urgent relevant business. So with that, we're going to conclude the meeting whenever I hit this table. Over, job done for tonight.
Thank you, Chair.
Job done. See you all in December. And the next full council meeting will be in December. By the special one before that, of course. Executive from the DFA. My God. Serious business. Who do you blame?